Hi, I'm Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're three Black moms.
Pro-life, pro-choice. Well, there's a big debate happening around this nation because word leaked out that the Supreme Court might be considering a ruling that would overturn Roe versus Wade, which is the historic decision regarding abortion rights. There's a lot to be said on both sides, and this is one issue that the three of us have our own differing opinions. So we want you to join this conversation as we talk about what the real issues are and the meanings behind the words pro-life and pro-choice. Definitely very triggering expressions, and there are many who are outraged at the thought that someone else is deciding whether or not they can have abortion when desired, and there are others that are upset that the child's right to life is not being considered. But what's the real story? Well, sisters, what do you think? And what do you see may happen if Roe versus Wade is overturned?
I can start
Go
because
right
I have
ahead.
my own story.
Yes.
Well, this is something that I never really talked about, but when I first got married and we got pregnant for the first time, we went on vacation. And what happened is that I was 11 weeks pregnant. Before we left for Disney World, I went to my OBGYN and she did a check on me and she says, okay, she listened for the baby's heartbeat, but said, it's too early. I don't expect to hear it. And she didn't. And then we went to Disney World, my husband and I started to spot. And I called the doctor, and as the spotting got worse, I we ended up going to a local hospital. They did an ultrasound. My baby, the fetus, was supposed to be at 11 weeks. It had died at 8 weeks, but it did not expel. My baby. So if I had continued to let it happen, there was a chance I could have hemorrhaged and bled to death. So they call that a missed miscarriage or a missed abortion, because usually a miscarriage is a spontaneous abortion. And so they had to take me in and sedate me and take my first pregnancy. And so technically, if Roe v. Wade were overturned, I would have been forced to take the chance on whether or not I would bleed to death, and my daughter would have never been born. And so it's about those cases, but it's also really a case of body autonomy and a woman making a choice with the help of her partner and her doctor. And I don't want the government stepping in and telling me, well, that fetus that has now died still has more rights than you do. And it doesn't matter what reason a woman has to decide not to carry her child to term. It's still between her, her conscience, her faith, and her doctor. And I don't want any old men without uteruses to tell me that they have to, they're going to decide that my life is worth less the child that I'm carrying.
Hmm. Well, now that is quite a story. Now I've got a story, as you know. 2 months. Let's see. I gave birth to Zakia in November, uh, and the following February. So I guess that was 3 months later. I was in intense pain and could not move. And so my husband took me to the hospital where they discovered I had a fibroid tumor on one side and a burst tubal pregnancy on the other side. And they said they had to operate immediately. Otherwise, I would die. Same situation. And so they had to take out the fibroid tumor on one ovary and then take out the tube that had burst on the other side. And they said as a result that it'd be very, very slim chance that I would ever get pregnant again. But that was fine. The main thing was that I lived. I noticed though that they were very careful in the language that they used. They did not say anything like abortion or even taking the fetus. I mean, just to not trigger anything in me that may have caused me to say, well, can we see if we can, not do this procedure or whatever. But they were the doctor was very careful in the language that was used.
Yes.
But the reality is that I would have died had I not had it removed. And I don't know if not allowing a woman to remove a burst tubal pregnancy is part of what that overturning of that decision would be.
Yes, it is.
Um,
It is. In some states, there, people who have obviously no idea about how biology works have says, well, can't they remove the fetus from the tube and place it in the uterus? No, they can't. An ectopic pregnancy is not viable, and yet they would rather have the woman die than to eliminate, to abort, because let's not use this as it's a bad word. It's not. And to abort something that is not viable. But like I said, and so we all have those choices that we make, but we get to make them.
well, Nicole Cox says, thank you for sharing, Cheryl, and thank you for joining us, Nicole. And we want to hear from you all who may have their their opinions. Many people have that, and she says, thank you for my openness. Thank you so much, Nicole. A lot of women have miscarriage stories. Michelle Obama had some miscarriages. And so, things happen in our bodies, and men who have kind of dominated obstetrics, even though it doesn't make any sense. It made more sense when we had midwives that understood a woman's body because they had one being involved in the birthing process. But now, since it's been turned into a business on such a massive scale, there are a lot of things that are being done to women that are really horrific. And well, before I get into my spiel, let Barbara express her thoughts on this, because I know you also have a very strong opinion on this pro-life, pro-choice debate.
Well, I look at stories like this and I feel very moved by the implication that has surrounded it. And for one, I think that we have to be very careful not to allow what is a moral dilemma be confused with the politicizing of an action that has begun to be a particular agenda of some. And I will go on record as saying no man and no woman has a right to their own body. And I will tell you why. Because every person, born or unborn, whether they were conceived through consensual sex, through rape, through incest. Every single person in the world has been bought and paid for and redeemed by God's own blood. That right does not belong to any of us to make a decision to remove a baby that is viable, because the whole crux of the matter is about, it's not about surgical procedures that will save a woman's life. The discussion comes about a person deciding to have an abortion because it is inconvenient to have a baby. And, it may disrupt the person's life, or it may be traumatizing if the pregnant female is underage, like say it's incest or rape or something. But an added trauma is to do something to the body of a young woman by causing a purposeful taking of, scraping the womb and all that of the baby. And I think that we have to realize that because Jesus Christ himself paid for that baby, born or unborn, under whatever the circumstances are, we have to look at that and realize that every living being has been paid and bought for with God's own blood. It's not something that we have done. And I know there are horrific circumstances where people become pregnant. And I think in every case that has to be looked at. But I will say something that Jesse Jackson said once. And he said in 1973, when Roe v. Wade was first on the table, he stated that abortion was Black genocide. And I think he saw that as an opportunity to control the races. And anybody can go on Google and look up the statistics on how abortion has impacted the child abuse level, where those things have kind of climbed equally, where if there is no care for the baby before birth, then there is this feeling of nonchalance toward a child that is born that may be considered not wanted. And they've been talking about this a lot on WNBI in Chicago. And they actually recommended this book by people that answer some of the hardest questions regarding abortion. And my husband has like tons of books. I didn't even know that. But this one was the one that I saw, kind of thumb through, and it is a comprehensive and compassionate look at the legal, biological, medical, ethical, and moral, philosophical, and biblical arguments for the pro-life movement. And as we are talking about it, we want to discuss whether or not even Roe v. Wade was constitutional when it was implemented. Is it constitutional if it is removed? Because a lot of the same reasons that are given for pro-choice are the same reasons that were given for the right to own slaves. What do you
Yes.
want to say
Okay.
about that?
Let me jump in.
Barbara, you go. Cheryl, you go ahead and address that, and then I'll address it.
Yeah. For one thing, let me start with this. We do not live in a theocracy. So your faith is not the faith. Just because you believe these things, that is not the faith that everyone has. There are several statistics. You're saying this is a moral thing. That's a moral thing for you. But for other people, it's not just an inconvenience. It is being able to survive. It is being able to care for the children you already have. And the fact is that there are several things. One, for 400 years, Black women have not had bodily autonomy because they were enslaved, and then they were told that rape isn't possible for Black women. So anybody had that going on. For the others, and the other thing is that Black women are 2.5 to 3 times more likely to die from complications of childbirth because of medical malpractice. And these are the births that people want. So why are we going to trust that someone is going to care for us when they don't care for us when we want a child? One of the best athletes and one of the richest women in the world, Serena Williams, almost died after childbirth because her needs were not being addressed. And it's great if you have these feelings and you think that, Jesus died for our sins. I believe that too. But I do not believe that because of my religious faith that I should impose that on everyone else. And as I address the whole thing about constitutionality with Roe v. Wade, there's a lot of things that were not enshrined in the Constitution. Remember 3/5 people? That's what we were. And also, a woman's right to contraceptive is on the table. A lot of the things women could not, years ago, they could not get a credit card without their husband's consent. And there are also things that aren't enshrined. And as far as interracial marriage, same-sex marriage, there are a lot of things that have moved beyond something. And the cases that Judge Alito was talking about was 17th century in another country that he is using. And I don't think your faith should say should and it should be the reason why I can't do what I want, or my daughter, because my days of childbirth are over, but my daughter or her daughter or other people's daughters or other pregnant people, because we're also talking about transgender men who may become pregnant, and this may be traumatic. And to assume that a 13-year-old or a 12-year-old who has been raped is going to be more traumatized by even taking the abortion pill is kind of, it's not even thinking of that person as a child. And I don't think your faith should dictate what I do with my body. If you don't believe in abortion, this is my thing, then don't have one.
Okay. So now, Nicole Cox has said, and she said, thank you for sharing your faith, Barbara. And she also says, if we as Christians are going to present pro-life arguments, it is true we cannot argue by a faith others do not share. We have to think deeper. And I agree that we must think deeper, because what's the real issue when we start speaking about morality? The reason why we have this problem and can't agree is because of the twisted way we think about sex. We have
Yes.
made the act of having sex criminal, and then
Yes.
we have
Only
decided
for the women. Only for the women.
only for the women, which is quite hypocritical. And we've also decided who deserves to be able to have a child and have that child cared for. Now, if we had a society that was really based on the principles taught by Jesus, we would be loving all children. We would be raising them communally. We would be making sure that all children were cared for. If we got rid of the reasons why women seek abortion, then there would be less abortions. And then, of course, you're talking about those medical emergencies. There shouldn't even be a question about that.
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is, when you teach a hypocritical point of view to men and women, when you promote men being sexually irresponsible and then condemn women if they get pregnant, that way of thinking is what led to this kind of a debate, because you have so many moralistic people condemning people for pregnancy who would never take care of that child if that child were born, that the woman aborts. So that's hypocrisy. But
yes.
since we're
So let's
talking
talk
faith,
about this.
Well,
What
let's
are
talk
some of
about
the reasons people do get abortion?
well, let's talk. Well, first, before we do that, let me issue this thought I want to put out there. Jesus has said, he has explained that he did not die for our sins. We are not sinners. We were not born in sin. That's a mistaken belief created by the church to control people. It's on the internet. You want to see what Jesus said? He said he went through the crucifixion to demonstrate that you are not your body. You are an eternal spirit, and you should never fear death because there is no death. He was trying to teach that to his disciples. There is no reason for guilt because we are not born in sin. That belief is not correct. Number one. So for Christians who really want to follow Christ, that's a whole show in itself. But you need to go on the internet and find that information because he does explain what really happened in the crucifixion.
I think it's easier if you just read the Bible if you want to know what Jesus said.
That depends on what version of the Bible.
That's another conversation and another show. I'll send you information, but for right now, let's talk about the reasons why people get abortions. And for the most part, it is because of a heartless, cruel, insensitive, women condemning society.
Yes.
That does not love the children that are conceived. And so in desperation, sometimes a woman makes that choice. And if a woman is raped, what kind of a society forces a woman to have sex or a child to have sex? So because of the crimes committed against women, because of the insensitivity of men, because of the hypocrisy of men wanting to have sex and then wanting to condemn a woman
or violence, because rape isn't about sex, it's
rape
about
is
violence.
An act of violence and control.
An act of violence and control. Exactly.
And why did Jesus tell that woman who was about to be stoned when he said, "Let he who is sinless cast the first stone"? Let's take a look at the fact that whoever she had sex with, she didn't do it by herself. So how hypocritical was it for anybody to condemn her? So when people talk about, oh, you should not have an abortion, oh, you should think about the child's rights, think about that woman's right, and think about her right to conceive and to bear a child that you deny her when you deny her basic ways to survive because you decide she didn't have enough money to have a child, or she didn't have the right marriage, or whatever you think is moral. All of those things are invented by the church and has nothing to do with God's law, which is only love. Not judgment,
and not for nothing, but the same people who want to deny your right to decide to terminate for whatever reason. I don't care if it is inconvenience. That's none of my business. There are 400,000 children in foster care. We are, but and people are not stepping up to adopt them. People are going over, and then there's this whole race thing. It's about the fact that white women are delaying childbirth as well as everyone else because we can't afford it. They don't want child care for this. They don't want child care benefits for this, and for women who get pregnant who decide to carry. They also, you have representatives from this country grousing about children being sent formula, children at the border who are sent formula, and people are saying, oh, they shouldn't give formula to all these babies that are illegal. Where is your pro-life stance there if you think that because a child was born to a woman who is undocumented, that child deserves to starve because they're not American? And so
they're not married. Same attitude.
Yeah, or they're not married, and no one says anything about taking responsibility. They just talk about, yes, that child has a right to life. That child has the right to comfort, to love, to food, to support from family, and no one says anything about what happens to the man. Where is that responsibility? And there's none on this. It's all about controlling women. The patriarchy is afraid. White people are going to be replaced by 20 or in the minority by 2036. They're afraid that whole replacement theory is scaring them, and that's where this has come from. And that's why they're also starting, they're talking about getting rid of, and these are part of the things that were mentioned in that leaked position, and then said, yeah, but we're not going to do that. Same-sex marriage, interracial marriage. One representative says, oh, next is going to be Brown versus Board of Education. They're talking about turning back the clock to put people who look like us, people who don't look like us, but definitely women, back in their place. We need to get our business out of everybody else's uterus. If you care about children, then you make sure that there's a child tax credit, which expired. You make sure that that child has health care, which people don't want. You make sure that that child has food, which people don't want because those children are brown and undocumented. And then you come and talk to me and you give the woman choice, and she should still have the same choice about whether or not she wants to carry that child to term. Her partner, her doctor, and nobody else, because this really isn't our business. And there are absolutely, as Vice President Kamala Harris asked Justice Kavanaugh, are there any laws to govern men's bodies? No, they are not.
Well, Barbara, you got to reply to that. And we got to, well, let me just review a couple of responses.
Statements, yeah.
Eric wants to know about Jesus said he went to the crucifixion to demonstrate there is no death. Yes, that is why. We'll talk about that. That's a whole show in itself.
That is an interesting thought. Yeah, go on.
Fox said, "This is America. America is not Christian. It is capitalist republic. Money, unfortunately, fuels change, not morals. So I think we Christians need to be ready to put our money toward holistic, mother-centered, pro-life options, healthcare, housing, education, etc." I certainly agree with that. And she said, "I'm not saying that Roe v. Wade should stand, but I am saying that if it falls, believers need to get creative and generous to support those who need it to ensure these saved babies thrive into adulthood." And Eric says, "Taking away of an innocent life is not a basic human right, not for anyone. A woman's right to control her own body does not give her the right to end someone else's life."
You know what, Eric?
Okay,
I'm
I would
sorry.
like to
I'm sorry.
respond to that if I
I'm
can
sorry.
get a chance to say something to some of those claims.
Okay,
I
go
think
right
a
ahead.
lot of times we are thinking in terms of the control that we want over our own lives. And there are some things that we really don't have control over. And I think both of you, Naima and Cheryl, have brought up some really good points about the care of children, even the ones who are born and in the foster care system. I think that it is on people who have that kind of concern to really step up and be willing to adopt children. And I know that in China, where they leave kids out on the street if they don't want them, people will pick them up, take them to these centers, and then they do get adopted by people who do want children. But the other thing that I would like to address is the fact that a lot of the claims that we make are they have not been proven to be true. For instance, and I'm going to refer to this book again, that sort of talks about how abortions are helpful to women in society. The pro-life movement doesn't care about social justice. I should not have to raise an unwanted child. My circumstances justify ending my pregnancy. My body, my choice. And they go over each one of these claims with responses that will help a person make a life-giving choice. Like a lot of these crisis pregnancy centers, when they offer a woman another choice, as in adoption, the companies that I have worked for, that I have written newsletters for, they will see a woman through her pregnancy, whether it is an unwanted pregnancy or a crisis pregnancy, line them up with services where they are taken care of, and then fit them with families that do want to adopt children. Sometimes they're families that don't have any children or can't have any children. I think a lot of those avenues are not explored unless a person has an opportunity to go through a crisis pregnancy center, see that the person inside really is a real person. Sometimes they hear a heartbeat and that changes their mind. And then, like you were saying in your instance, the baby did not have a heartbeat because the baby had died in utero. But that is so different than a person that has a viable pregnancy, not an autoptic pregnancy. We want to provide an opportunity for a person to be able to make a choice that is not going to render them with guilt or hauntedness. I know when I worked with the ministry Women Exploited by Abortion, WEBA, these people talked about how they were traumatized. Not everyone is, but they talked about how they were traumatized by their abortion, how they got no support, how they were treated like they were bad people because they had chosen to get an abortion. And I do want to bring up the fact that a lot of times one of the claims is that if we have a substantial medical facility, those places give healthy abortion options to people. When on Michigan Avenue in Chicago, there was a major expose that showed women that had botched abortion procedures where the conditions were unsanitary. And this is at the high end on Michigan Avenue. And also the fact that when women have complications that follow, they don't go back to the abortion clinic. They actually go to their own practitioner. So a lot of these things that happen to them, they go under the table and they are not addressed because people don't always know that this is what has happened to people.
You know, that's all of those things are well and good from that side of the point. But the thing is that you are still saying, oh, some people are very, you know, they regret it. But the one thing I do know about Crisis Pregnancy Center, they bully women, a lot of women, when they think that they're given a choice and they're not. And I will tell you, Planned Parenthood will give you all options. So it's not like they're going in and it's an abortion mill. And there are sometimes it just isn't the right time for women. And like I said, we need to stop trying to force our religious beliefs on anyone else. And I'm sorry, your husband, yes, he's a great father of three kids, but the last I checked, he still did not have a uterus. And I'm sorry, and if anything, that is one thing that I can say. It's easy for you to talk about all of these things, but I unless I know there's something I know about a lot of these people, they're putting up and they're saying, well, they're just adding to the spate of children, and it's about babies because there's plenty of children available for adoption, but nobody wants an older kid, and saying that, oh, we will do this, and everybody doesn't regret abortions. I have had enough friends who have had to go through the procedure that they are relieved because it was not the right time. It gave them time for when they could have a child and they could take care for those children. Not everyone believes that everyone is going to be pilloried. We need to stop using this as if this is a shame. You know, if you knew, what is it, like 1 in 3 or something like that, women have had abortions. There are a lot of people where this is medical, this is reproductive care. And I'm sick and tired of people using their faith to decide for someone else. In Jewish law, if the woman's life is in danger, it is imperative that you save the baby. But if they get rid of Roe v. Wade, there are places that will trigger abortion laws that will say, even in if the health of and life of the mother is threatened, that pregnancy still has to go to term. We need to stop acting as if women are just incubators. We are
Even our cousin Jay said, what about the men, and that men should be willing
exactly.
to
What
run
about
this.
the men? But we are not incubators.
I got another one that I'm going
please stop.
to show up.
Please stop, because
But
all of those
these
are still
opportunities
bullied.
for people to actually do their own research
But
regarding this
they
issue.
do.
I think
That's the problem, is that people who are anti-abortion believe that people don't wrestle with this decision, that people don't think about it,
I know
and
that
that
they do. I've
if
worked
given
at a
enough
crisis pregnancy center.
I'm sorry, stop talking over me. And if giving enough bullying and all the other choices, they will choose the right choice. The right choice for you is not the right choice for me. It is not the right choice for that person. It's not worth the right choice for the woman that I don't know who's struggling, or who just, this isn't the right time, or she's homeless, or whatever the reason is. She has the right to make the choice herself without interruption from somebody else who really has no stake. They don't have any skin in the game, because they will say, yeah, we're going to work with you through this. And then what happens when she's still struggling a year later after she's adopted on her baby? Are those people still going to be around? Are they going to provide her housing?
Some of the companies that I know of, they are.
Some of them do, but also a lot of them, it's also turning us into a baby mill, so that, oh, if you don't want that baby, then somebody else. That, you know what? And do you know how the adoption fees are? You're buying a baby. you're buying a baby. So because the supply isn't big enough right now, especially for white babies, because that's why they go over to Russia and all these other countries to adopt babies, or they go over to China to adopt babies. But there are plenty of black babies that they don't want. So don't tell me that this is all about and all lives are equal, because they're not. But the one thing is that a woman is a person, and it's a baby inside her when she says it's a baby, and whatever she decides to do with her body still has to be her choice, because abortion care is reproductive care. It just is. And all the books and all the research and all the bullying is not going to stop the fact what overturning Roe v. Wade will do will be keep the, because there's always been abortion. And all it
There
will do is
certainly
keep,
has been.
yeah, and all it will do is keep people from having safe abortions, because they're all, and that's the thing. It will not stop it, but it will stop, it will make more women die from it. And then if you say, well, then they deserve it, then how does that make you pro-life? And a lot of
I
people
don't
say
know.
that.
Okay, I think maybe there are people that say those things and feel those things. I know that I certainly don't. And I know one of the reasons that this is just my opinion, there are a lot of people that are pushing for pro-life because they see how countries that have practiced child sacrifice, they have
You know
been
what?
destroyed. And let me
But you
also
know
say
what?
this,
Also,
because I
also
don't
what
want
happens?
to. Okay, now you're talking over me, girl. Okay, so let me just say, I don't think that it is just a matter of a person's faith. I think that it is a matter of a person taking the responsibility that does not rightfully belong to them. Like I said in the beginning,
Well, wait a minute.
there
Who does it belong? Does it
the
belong to the
moral
men who make the laws?
disagreement is because people don't want to accept the fact that they don't have the right to their own body. We don't. Whether or not a
Okay, then who
person
does?
believes in
Who
God
does?
or not,
Well, who does
we
then? Who
actually
has the
don't.
right to your own body? Who has
God
the right to
does.
your body?
The person who created
But
us, the
but it's
person who
your
made
but and
creation.
everybody doesn't believe that's when you slip back into the theocracy. Not
Yeah,
everybody even
just
believes in
because,
God. So
yeah,
yeah, and that's the thing, is that you're saying, okay, well, God does. Well, maybe God says, okay, my God may say, you know what, I'm giving you autonomy, which is what he did. He gave those free will to Adam and Eve, if you believe that. And I don't believe that the Republican Party and the Supreme Court have the final say on any God. And even if you say they don't have the right to an abortion, or they don't have a right to do this, this is not a theocracy. This government is supposed to be a separation of church and state. And your argument, your debate, your opinion is from a theocratic point of view. And you cannot have in a country
is
that
that
does not,
wrong?
that is trying well, that's the way you do your life. But the thing is that there was a reason why the forefathers had a separation of church and state. And all we're doing is doing exactly what we thought the Taliban was going to do and is going to do, is do the Sharia law, and govern women's bodies. If it would be fine if we were also governing men's bodies, but we're not. We're not holding one man responsible for any child that was conceived. We're not saying you have to pay child support, you have to get a job, you have to make sure that that child is fed. No, we're not doing that. All we're doing is punishing women, including children, for something that they did not do together. You can be a Christian and you can still believe that I have the right, and I can get down on my knees and I can pray and I can help, with the God that talks to me, to decide. Who are you to say that because your God says, yo, you can't do that, that God is speaking to me? Because my God and your God don't say this, don't talk to each other, don't talk to each of us the same way. Because there's a lot of things that you all have chosen that my God wouldn't have chosen for me.
Well,
Or
I have
or those
another
who
book that I
believe
would
that
like
I
to
don't care how many books
show
you,
up.
you show up, you're
I'm
not
just
going to
showing
change
this for
my
the
mind.
audience to get
Yeah.
some idea that there are
They
other
show the other
avenues
side.
to check out.
You
Well,
know,
let's obviously, of course, this is a special edition, so we're going to go an hour.
Oh my goodness.
and
Yeah, y'all didn't know the time
unless
had
room
passed.
service, unless housekeeping knocks on my door.
Gotta wait now. But obviously, this is a very intense topic, and it hits a lot of buttons because so many people have been conditioned to respond
A
to
certain way with certain wording.
other people's sexuality, and I think that's the
Yes.
issue that we have, especially with the religious community, believing that you have the right to decide who should have sex. That's been the problem since the very beginning.
Yes.
Until we correct that mistaken thought, we can't really fix all the other problems, which has to do with deciding who gets to have their child taken care of and properly honored and nurtured and respected. That's another issue. Why is it that you can't get basic needs met when you are pregnant, whether it's because you said some vows in a house of religion and got a license from the state, or you just loved somebody? Why are we believing that we should have the right to decide who has the right to have a child and then shame them if we decide they had sex and we didn't approve? And then the shame and the condemnation is one of the major factors that lead to the decision for abortion. So we have to look
Also,
at that environment.
and you're right in that it is about sex, because what the people don't understand is that striking down Roe v. Wade, also they're talking about taking away contraception. So it's not about it really is about deciding who gets to have sex and under what conditions,
That's right.
because they don't
Why
want
do
you
we
to have
think that?
contraception either. And there was a time that you could not get contraception if you were not a married woman. And so now they're saying, okay, you should not be having sex if you're not married. Well, you know what? When and where I decide to have sex is also none of the government's business. That's also between me and my conscience and my faith and my God and my partner.
Now let me
And
make a couple of points, and this has to do with the issue of responsibility. Every female of every species on the planet knows when she is fertile. Why don't human females have better knowledge of their bodies? That
right.
again is a reflection of our twisted attitudes towards sex. It's no reason
Absolutely.
why we don't know biologically when we are fertile. I mean, it's not a mystery. It's very specific times our bodies work like clockwork. Why don't we know?
Those
Why
that do,
not
because
been
not all
taught?
of them do.
And the reality is we can make the decision just like every female of every other species. You know when you are fertile and when you are not. If we don't know, it's because we have failed to learn and failed to teach, because we have twisted ideas about sexuality. That's the main problem. And then the second thing is, if people are engaging in sex, whether they have said some vows in a house of religion or not, that really is their personal business. It
Yes.
is. Why are we condemning it? Why do we have laws in the past that actually condemn people to death or public flogging and other things? That was twisted in itself. So if we're holding up a Bible, and this is a book put together by a council of men who removed all references to women who had knowledge and skills. They removed it because of their thinking. Why are we referring to that book? Why are we referring to any religious teaching which is male dominated and therefore imbalanced? And
okay, this sounds like another show, but I would like to address that if I may.
Well, that's the core issue of the abortion issue. Now, the other thing, we speak about life. If you understood that life is eternal, which is what Jesus was trying to demonstrate in the crucifixion, not dying for our sins, and I'm saying that emphatically, but to show you that you are an eternal being, then you really are not creating life. A person chooses to come through you. Now, if you choose to terminate that body that they were going to inhabit, that is a choice you have made. And yes, it may go against that person's choice who did choose to come through you. But they also understand whatever distress you were under. They understood if you were not able to provide for their care. They understand that. So there really is no judgment in the way we think that there's judgment, because we think God is mean as we are. And we think that we're creating life.
Yes.
We're creating life. That life already exists. That soul already existed. But also they have a right to make a choice. And sometimes that life they change their mind. That's what a stillbirth
Right.
is. They've changed their mind. They weren't ready. So at any point in this process, any of the three people involved, the male, the female, or the child, can change their mind. Now, when can the male change their mind? They can change their mind before they commit the act. That's the power
Yes.
that they have. So if they don't make that choice before the time, they really don't have a right to make a choice afterwards, because they had the power to choose and they forfeited that right when they chose to perform the act. The woman, we have to get rid of this whole rape issue, because nobody should ever be assaulted and then they're pregnant and then they are told that they have to give birth. That's a horrible thing.
And that even at 13 years old, you'd be an amazing mother.
Right.
I remember what my child was like at 13.
So that's another issue. We have a sickness about sex again, which is why we have rape. So we got to look at what's the mentality of a person who forces the sex act on somebody. Is any other species on the planet doing that besides human beings? Only one other species, chimpanzees. So what does that say about us? So we got to look at who we are as a human species. Why are we even having this debate about whether or not to remove a fetus from a womb? Well, look at all the other wrongs we're doing because of our ignorance that led up to that decision. When we fix that, then we can fix the abortion issue. So that's what I have to say about that. Let me bring in a couple of more comments and then y'all can respond. Eric Piment says, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights proposed by the UN does not recognize abortion as a basic human right. Recognizing that a child is alive and is a human does not require religious belief. Okay, that's one thought. We can respond to that. And then he says the Supreme Court did not base its decisions on religious grounds, but on constitutional grounds. Okay, and we can respond to that. And then Nicole says, I have to say that at this point, Naima has some spiritual beliefs she is placing on me. Yes.
Yes.
Well, let me respond to that. One of the reasons I think that abortion became so popular, besides the fact that it is a major money-making business, is because in the old days, before there was abortion, if a woman got pregnant out of wedlock, she was like sent off to Aunt Mabel's up somewhere in some state where nobody knew her, had the baby in secret, and then came back and everything was fine. Abortion has become a convenience because women have been shamed if they do have a child out of wedlock. And until we remove that system of shame that has happened to a person, we would not even need to support abortion with all of the ramifications that come with that, with a person sometimes being sterilized after having an abortion, and then later when they want to have a child, they can't, and other things that happen to a person. And I would like to also add that we all have some kind of religious belief that we cling to, that we fall on, that we follow. I happen to believe that Jesus Christ is God, that he did come to bring about the reconciliation between us and God the Father, and that it was his blood that covers us, that makes us acceptable to God. And one of the things for us to say that we are not sinners, it's not because of the things that we do. When we compare ourselves with each other, of course we're good, we're better than that person, but the fact that we are separated from God. We are not eternal beings the way God is eternal, who has always existed. We are brought into existence at the moment of conception. Then we become an eternal being because God has created us, which is why God has the right to make the determination if a person lives or dies. And I think it is very difficult to accept that because our sin is our chosen autonomy. We have self-will. We will do what we want to do. We will make the choices that we want to make. And that is what scripture says is sin. Us choosing to go our own way and do what we want, when we want, how we want it, without regard to an almighty creator who made us. That is the sin. It's not that, oh, we smoked, we drank, we got high, we fell out, we did those are the outcomes of what we all are inside. No one wants to admit that they're depraved at our best. It's like the Bible says, if you then being evil know how to give good gifts, so much more God the Father. So, and then here scripture is saying that we're evil. It's like, why is the word telling us we're evil? I'm a good person. I never did anything wrong. And so I think that the misconception that we are not governed by our religious beliefs, whether or not we feel that those are supposed to encompass everyone. And as you read scriptures, you realize the impact that women in the scriptures actually had, even in a society where women had no rights. Jesus used the opportunity to uplift women, to bring women up in a society in which women had gotten no respect. So I don't want people to be confused in thinking that scripture doesn't support women or women's rights.
And Adam, I'm just going to say, when God created Adam, assuming that one believes in
Creation.
the creation, he breathed life into him as a fully formed man.
That is correct.
Not as a zygote.
Yes.
So
And if you will remember,
stop.
Adam is the one who sinned. Women are not blamed for that. Man was, because he knew what he was supposed to do and he failed. That's why by one man sin entered the world, and by one man sin was eradicated.
Okay, so now we're going to be wrapping up probably in the next 7 minutes. Let me add a couple of more statements. And Nicole agrees. She says exactly, Barbara. And Nicole says, shame culture is the culprit in and out of the Christian faith. Human flourishing is the change. Human flourishing is the charge of every human. That is why I feel our energy should be placed on provision for flourishing, not debate. And I agree with that, Nicole. And one thing that I do want to add to that thought, and I know that people are strong in their belief, but you like to hold up books, Barbara. I'm going to, I have it on Kindle, so I can't hold it up.
You can hold up yours.
But I do want
when mine is published, I'll be holding up mine, no matter what we're talking about.
Well, I do want to urge you to read the book, Jesus, My Autobiography. And certainly you will find that Jesus has said that most of what is in the Bible is false.
Yes. Jesus said that?
And yes, because the very people that he was against hijacked his teachings and took most of it out of the Bible. And this is why we have this patriarchal woman.
Exactly. King James
society that he was against.
Yeah, he took out everything, like when they said about being against the king, if the king, wasn't doing the right thing. Well, he ain't like that, so he took all that out. The Bible is a history book written by people of faith, but it's like the telephone game. And it's like if you play the telephone game and you start at one end and you get to the other and all of those things, and by the time you get to the end, things have changed. So you go back 2,000 years and all of a sudden people say, yeah, but this is the exact word of God. It is a guidebook, and it tells you stories and shows you things, but it also is not and the thing about shame and covered with blood and the sin and all of this other theology. And all that blood theology and all that fire and brimstone and do this, you're going to go to hell or whatever people think. Yeah. The thing is that this government is not a theocracy. And I don't care, what anybody said, but we have a moral right. You have to decide your own moral. And yes, if you believe that your body belongs to God, that's great. But you know what? I'm living in mine right now with God's help. I'm living in mine, and God trusts me to make the right choices, and God trusts other people to make the right choices. And saying that, well, you don't have that right. We also don't have the right to starve children, but we have representatives that are saying you should not be sending formula to children who are not Americans. So don't tell me anything. Don't hold up any more books by pro-life people who don't care about the women. I
Oh,
am
these
not
people,
going
the
to do
books that
this.
I'm holding up are people that do care about women. That's why I particularly picked those books.
You know what? If you cared about women, if people cared about women, they're not worried about the shame. They're also holding men accountable, which no one does.
Yes, and
They're
then in
also
this
show,
book they actually
they're
do
also
talk about
showing.
that.
Stop talking over me. They're also talking about health insurance for children,
Yep,
food stamps,
yep,
housing,
yes,
education, childcare.
absolutely.
All of those things are also being cut because this country is more likely to care about keeping a permanent caste system of the poor, and they don't care about poor children. Because if they did, so don't tell me that it's about that, because it really isn't. And the people who will be hurt the most are women who need those resources the most. And if you really believe that, then take this pregnant woman into your life. Don't just adopt her child. Adopt her too. I mean, put your money where your mouth is, instead of saying, well, yeah, we have these resources, but what are you doing? What's the emotional support you're going to give this woman 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the road?
Well,
Because if you're not willing to do that, then you don't try to make decisions that will affect her life for those many years. Let her do that.
The words pro-life are really kind of a misnomer, because the
They're
philosophy
pro-birth.
who speak of pro-life is very anti-life. Just the
Yes.
hostility and the belief that God is as hostile as human beings. All the moralistic preaching, it's very anti-Christ. If you really know his teachings, and it was all about love, and it was definitely against all of those theocracies during his time that were hostile toward women, there is no way a person can believe they are following Jesus once they know what he taught and be spouting the things that the pro-lifers are spouting, which is very hostile toward women. And they speak of the rights of the child, but truly, if we had a society that cared about children's rights, then we would not be maintaining a class system and a shame system in which those that we decide don't have a right to have sex should not have their children cared for and should be punished in some kind of way by being shunned, because that's what happens to them. And then when we look at pro-life, that means a society that takes care of all of its people, regardless of what borders you live within, or what your color is, or your family name, or any of those things. This is not
Or
a
crimes that you
pro-life
have
society.
committed.
It's
You can't be pro-life and also want executions. You can't be pro-life and then not want that child to go to school because they have brown skin.
So
you can't
all
be,
things that we say that we are basing a spiritual belief on, look at what Jesus really taught and see if it has anything to do with the attitude of the pro-lifers. It's a very hostile way that they're claiming to be for the life of the child, but really they are about shaming women who they think should not have had sex because they weren't the right color or the right economic class or whatever the case may be. And as it's been said, now that more white women are having abortions, there's this fear of a change in the population.
So there's a push for more abortions in the Black community, you're saying?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
well, there is a push for women, and a lot of Black women who have chosen abortion. They chose it for a lot of times for economic reasons.
And that's what's wrong. That's what's anti.
Yes,
They
because they
can't
afford it. Because they can't afford it. They can't afford to have children. And I
that's
think it's
our
awful to be forced to have a child that you cannot care for when you are not going to be given the resources.
it's our whole society's fault that a woman should ever have to say, if I have this child, my society will not support me. They will allow me to suffer. That's a,
Yep.
because the child chose to come here. We're denying the rights of the child by not providing for that child's well-being because we don't think the mother deserved to have it. So that's our fault that this debate is even happening. We have to fix our society. When we fix our society, then this problem, this issue will not exist because no woman will have to deal with being neglected because she's having a child. And
You
this
know,
I
I
make
agree
that choice.
with everything actually that you both have said. Now, think about this because I feel some sense of shame about a culture that claims to be pro life but is hostile. None of the people that I have worked with, none of the pro life dinners that I have been to and supported, have I run into the type of hostility that you're speaking of. So, but obviously, you must have known some people that have given you this feeling. So where has that come from? Because I
It
have
comes
not
from
picked that up
people
from the
who
people that I
stand.
dealt with. What's
Okay,
that?
it comes from people who stand outside abortion clinics and yell murderer and show fetuses. Because if you really thought that that
Okay.
was a child,
Throw
you
blood.
would not. You would not show that. When a child, when a person, like say you have a child, God forbid, that is murdered. When you show up to the trial, you do not have a picture of that person's autopsy. You have a picture of them if when they look the way you remember them in life. So if you're holding up pictures of aborted fetuses, you are dehumanizing what you said was a child. It's shock, but it's also very hostile because if you really believe that was a person, you wouldn't treat it with such disrespect. And
Well,
that's the
You
thing. And
know,
we got to
I
go
I
because we
have
could
to
talk for
agree
2
with
more
you
hours.
there. And
yeah,
I will tell you that in the old days, in my young days, I have actually been in a prayer position where we were praying in front of abortion clinics, and then the pro-choice people were the ones holding up the nasty signs saying
I've never
decadent things about people that were praying. So I have seen the opposite side. I have seen the hostility come from the the pro abortion groups where they will stand and have yelled nasty cheers. I mean, nasty, made up on the spot, and you could just feel the spiritual hate that actually came from that. So I've actually witnessed this in my own life, but I have seen the kind of people that you're talking about as well, the ones that say the nasty things about people who have had abortions. And I am totally against that. I am all about being willing to show compassion to the person, even going with them. If they have made, and I've had friends who've actually, they are pro life, they support the life of the unborn, but clients that they have talked to, when they have made a decision to have an abortion, they will go with them to the clinic just in case they change their mind at the last minute, but then to be there for them after they have come out of that experience, and it may not have been what they thought it was. I've actually seen an abortion done where they documented it. It was not pleasant.
well, let me
Well,
That
let me
experience was
a lot of
years ago.
medical procedures aren't pleasant, though.
well
So
but before we go, but maybe before we continue,
Before we really
we're,
go,
we're gonna go another half hour. Now this is the
we
6 o'clock
can't
show.
because I've got
But
plans. I
we
got
do
to get out of
have
here.
a couple of comments I want to share. Russian concussion said, and I've got friends on the other side. And well, no, well, but let me go back. First, Nicole has a couple of books that she's recommending, and Dr. Eric Massall and Macaulay and Dr. Vince Van Tu can straighten all this theology out. Black theologians, there they are. Okay, we'll listen to them. And Nicole said, find their books. And Eric Piment said, we actually did that and took people
into our own home and apartment who were not related to us, accepting a child whose mother could not support her. Okay, that's a good thing.
For how
And
many years?
he
How many?
said
See,
we had
that's the thing. It's not
It
just,
was for a year until
yeah,
the person came and got their child.
but
okay.
that's not the same thing as
Oh, I
you
remember
know.
that. I remember
Yeah,
that.
I
There was
remember that too.
yeah. And then Russian Concussion says I'm pro-life, and says, and I've got friends on the other side. And Nicole says gospel, Haymanot, urban apologetics, and reading while black. Those are the books she recommends. And Russian Concussion says used to be pro decision, but experience changed me. It says I think my get my glasses so I don't squint. Um, think I think to my cute, squishy little baby right now, and my heart melts. Just can't imagine aborting that beautiful gift. And
Because
also,
you had the choice to have her.
and then
Forced
also,
forced birth and forced abortion are are pretty much two sides of the same coin. I also had a very beautiful squishy baby, and but the thing is that I chose to have her. And
yeah,
that's the difference, is that it's about, you chose to have that. You were not forced to have that child.
and then Russian Concussion says our media and government plays off of a people's fear and ignorance. The more you're equipped with knowledge, and that's the biggest enemy of government, an informed woman. Well, I most definitely agree with that. And again, I say that it is our responsibility as women to know our bodies better. We should not be having sex blindly, like we don't know, oh, well, can I get pregnant? I mean, it's stupid the fact that we are this ignorant about our bodies. And there's no other species on the planet, I repeat, no other species on the planet where the females don't know when they are fertile. We're the
Yeah,
only
but
ones
other
who
species,
have
they're
a
only
problem
fertile
with
like
that.
twice a year.
Oh,
That's
no, no,
the
no, no, no.
difference.
There are many
Some
who are
some of them that, other than primates. But the thing is that
you
what
should know.
what this will
Why
do
don't
is that
know?
we also can use birth control
We're
that
making it
they're
for,
talking about taking away.
but that's the point. We
And
have
and
the
we still have
power
the
to
whole thing where
control.
1 in 5 women are sexually assaulted. So at that
And
point,
no other species commits rape other than chimpanzees and human beings. We're the
yep,
ones with the problem.
primates. Yeah.
We're the only ones that do something that twisted with our bodies. No one else does.
But the
And
thing
we're the
is,
only
men
ones, we're the
have to
only
do that.
females of this, we're the only females on the planet who do not know when we are fertile. Why are we not knowing our bodies better? If we just did that, then this
because
whole
because
debate would be
because
over.
they don't want to teach sex education in school either.
So
And
then
if
let us,
mom doesn't know, and how she's supposed to teach her kid, and then you have the we have government right now banning books to keep people from learning about the fact that people were really awful to black people, hundreds of years ago, and still are. And they also have banned, and the whole thing about not having sex education, because people are afraid that if they learn about these things, then they're going to go out and experiment. We have a
stupidity.
society that is convinced that ignorance is bliss,
And that's why we're having this debate. Now,
and that's why we're having this problem.
right now with the internet and all the access to knowledge, there's no excuse. We have the power to research and learn the signs, and each woman has the power to discover when she is fertile. There's no excuse for us not doing that. We're choosing ignorance at this point. This debate doesn't need to even exist. We can always know when we are fertile, and we have to correct the twisted way we have taught and allowed men to be taught about sex, so that they are using it as a form of power, control, and
Violence.
intimidation. No one else does that. That's an illness, and that needs to be
And that
eliminated.
doesn't tell you that we're sinners, that kind of behavior.
That's not sin, that's stupidity. That's stupidity. Anytime you do something that's not in your best interest, that is stupidity. And you have the right and the power to eliminate that as well. And when it comes to life throughout the pregnancy, the soul of the child, the spirit, the life force energy of the child goes in and out of the body. That's what you're feeling when you're feeling the kicking. They're coming in and out during that pregnancy. But that body is the body that they're preparing for themselves. If you remove the body, well, then they'll go somewhere else. You're not killing a person. There is no death. that spirit will go somewhere else, or they might come to you again if they really intended to come through you for a reason. We have to know about life and eternal life, and not religiosity, which is based on untruth. Most of what Jesus taught never appeared in the Bible, because he said he came to free people. But if you tell the same lies that keep people in a state of fear and ignorance, how are they free? So that's why I recommend the book, Jesus, My Autobiography. Read it and absorb it, and then come back and let's have this discussion. Once you realize that, number one, he had female disciples.
Yes, he did.
Number two,
And those are the
You can
ones
get
who
that
stayed
from
with
reading the
him.
Bible, though. You know that
Yes,
those
but
women,
they
the
were the
people that he
ones.
even stayed with were his disciples.
Well, no, yeah, think about the fact that people base the Catholic Church, for one, on the fact they have men priests because Jesus had male disciples. Yeah, and
right,
those were
he
the
had
ones who
female
ran away.
disciples too, and they don't teach that.
And those were and the females were the ones who stayed when he died on the cross, and the other ones got scared and ran away.
And ran. Yeah, that's true.
But
And
and once again, we have people who are willing to sacrifice women, but they're willing to run away and not be held accountable. When they start holding men's bodies accountable for the fact that if they had sex 365 days, they could impregnate somebody 365 times. But a woman can only get pregnant probably, well, once a month. But then if she gets pregnant for 9, 10 months, at 40 weeks, she can only have one baby a year. But we are still holding women accountable. We are still telling women to cover themselves so that they don't tempt someone else. And we're not holding women accountable or men accountable. So
and
until
that
we start,
means we have to change how we raise our sons, because that's
yeah,
also within our power to do. If we
yes,
change the way we raise our sons and teach them respect for their bodies and the bodies of women and the respect for all life, then all this will change. We have the power to change this. No child should ever be born into a world unwanted and uncared for. And if there is a need to end a pregnancy because a mother's life is in danger, or because of whatever situation it is, then she should be able to do that. But we can eliminate all the other reasons other than a medical emergency. If we fix our society, we can get rid of rape. We can get rid of incest. We can get rid of economic distress. We have the power to do that. And we can get rid of the ignorance that keeps us from knowing when we're fertile. That's the
I
first
think
thing.
that is even another story. Do we really have the power, or do we just think we do?
We have the power. We refuse to use it because of what did our sister or brother, whatever, Russian concussion say? Ignorance. We're choosing ignorance. There's nothing
yeah,
to keep us from learning except our own choices. We have the
yeah,
power to choose. Why are we choosing ignorance? Did the church teach us that we were that powerless? Oh, we're sinners. We can't help it. That's a lie. Another lie to keep us in a
Actually,
state of
you can
bondage.
actually observe it through history, our own behavior. The reason
Our
we're
own
having this
behavior.
discussion is because we are sinners. If we weren't sinners, we wouldn't even have to deal with these kind of things.
It's not
all
a
right.
sin. It is. It
You
is
can
nothing
stay on
to keep
that. You can
us.
stay on that sin train, Barbara.
It's
I've gotten off.
I've been
we can
set free.
I've been
Sinners
set free. I'm not
sin.
on the sin
Free
train,
to not
and
sin.
yeah,
sin does not exist. It's an invention of the church, just like hell. There is no hell after
yes,
death. It's
exactly,
death.
exactly.
There's eternal life, and when you leave here, you figure out what you did wrong. God is not waiting to punish you for making stupid decisions. You've already experienced the consequences of your stupid decisions. So when
Yes,
you leave here,
exactly.
you discover why you didn't have the knowledge that would have helped you make better decisions.
Yes,
And
maybe you get the chance to come again.
you get a chance to come again. You keep coming
Please,
until you
no.
figure it out. That's what Jesus taught, and that's what they took out the Bible. But we got to go. It's about 6:15.
Yes, and
We're
yeah,
going to have to leave all of you. We appreciate you all. And we know this is a very spirited discussion. But again, knowledge is power. And if you're a woman, choose to learn about your body. Choose to know when your cycles are. Choose to know when you are fertile. Choose when you want to enjoy intimacy without pregnancy, and when you want to have intimacy and hope for a conception. Make the choice, because that's your real power. And men, you have the power to choose. When you don't want to be a father, then refrain from sexual intercourse.
or wrap it up. Or
Our
what you need to do, but you
That's
are
the
you are the
power.
second half of that. You are the part of the equation that you don't get to dictate. You have to take responsibility. Okay, that's enough.
There you go. Well, we got to go. Again, I really do urge those who want to know a little more to get the book, Jesus, My Autobiography. Just look it up online and then we'll talk. And Barbara's got all her books she's recommending. And for everybody who has an opinion, just keep watching. And whatever you choose to do, remember that if you personally are not about to get an abortion, do not get so upset about this issue, because if it's not really affecting you right now, don't stress. Just take the power that you have and
Go with
use
the
the choices
flow.
that you have the power to make right now. And you do have the power to choose if you just empower yourself with knowledge. We got to go. But I remind you all to follow our page on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Three Black Moms. And until next time, I'm Naima.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Barbara. We are three very spirited Black moms. Bye. Hi, I'm Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're Three Black Moms.